Hello, this is Community Unity Now, the D Tycoon Show. I am Trudy Leong, Administrator of the Rogers Park Chamber of Commerce, and this is Bill Morton, President of the Rogers Park Chamber of Commerce. Our very, very special guests today are Joanie Pallatto and Bradley Parker-Sparrow. They are of Southport Records and jazz artists of renown in Chicago. Welcome.
Thank you, Trudy. We're so glad to be here, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Bill.
And Happy New Year to everyone out here watching as well.
Happy New Year.
Yes.
Well, first of all, tell us a little bit about your background as a jazz artist, and then how you're giving back to the community.
Well, my background is from, I would say, I realized that I could sing when I was in junior high school, because I always was put in the soprano section of the choir in school until I auditioned for a special group that was singing pop songs. They didn't have room for a soprano. So I said, can I be an alto? That's when I discovered that I had a voice. So I didn't turn back from that moment. And I went to college in Cincinnati, Ohio, studied music and music education and voice, and then moved to Chicago, not knowing that I would meet my future husband in 1979. And ever since then, things developed in ways that I would have never expected. Sparrow had a recording studio and a record label. And one of the first things I would say that I really felt that I could give to the community was we would record so many artists in our studio and released their records. When you say Sparrow, from you started that before I knew you had a studio.
Well, even when I was trying to get a record deal when I was 21 or 22 and facing rejection, I would see my elders, then in their 60s and 70s, still facing rejection with no record deal, or just playing in lonely bars, not making a lot of money, not having health benefits. So I always thought it would be good to support the elders, which is just as important as supporting the little babies. And we've had quite a crew: Willie Pickens, Von Freeman, Bobby Lewis, King Fleming, and on, Ronnie Cooper. And plus...
Ron Cooper, it's funny you should mention Ron, because he's passed away now for several years, but he was a good friend and probably the best singer I've ever known.
Number one.
Boy, number one. He could scat up a storm, and he was homeless. Virtually most of the years that we knew Ron, he would sleep on the train. Never gave it a second thought. He would come to the studio, and anytime I called him to record and use that famous, beautiful voice of his and his talent as often as we could, and he'd be more than happy to do it. In fact, there's a recording we did with George Freeman, the venerable guitarist who's now 96 years young.
The baby.
Okay. And George wrote a song called And She Left Me. And I heard the song many years prior, and I wrote lyrics to it. And I said, well, I can't sing And She Left Me. I could, but I said, Ron's the man. So they got to know each other from that, and it's beautiful. It was a beautiful connection there. But, sort of like one person at a time. There's a quote I'm sure most people would or should know if you haven't heard it, from Mother Teresa. I want to make sure I get it right. She said, if you can't feed 100 people, then feed just one. And that's so profound. And I think in our lives, and we've tried to help individuals because it can be I'm sure for most people it can be very overwhelming and you feel helpless. You don't know, what can I do to help people? What can I do to help homeless people or people in the throes of a war or all the things that we're confronted with in this day and age. So you got to start on the ground level, you know. And I know you're a big proponent of that, Sparrow, just taking care of in your own backyard.
Yep.
Yeah.
One at a time. It's funny, some people are more like, in the old days they call them gypsies. They often don't want to be in one apartment or one place. They're gypsies, they used to call them. And if someone has that mentality, you can offer them assistance and food, but they're going to live their life the way they want to. And you can't force yourself on someone.
You can't judge them either.
Music is really good therapy. And in fact, I wish they would bring back, when I was I went to Paul Revere Grade School on 71st Street, and I remember they brought in a cellist from the Chicago Symphony. So we're talking 1959, and I never saw anything like that. Playing the cello in the class. Then I started banging on the piano. My auntie had a piano. And the other kids were out, you know, with their baseball bats and stuff. Here I am banging on the piano. I don't know why. But
It inspired you.
But that one, me seeing her play the cello really inspired me as a little kid. Then I'd see musicians on TV and they'd be, you know, famous. And I'd say, oh, that can get me out of this neighborhood. But I think if we help both the elderly and the very young, I'm saying starting at 2 or 3 with music. Music heals.
Music in schools?
Yeah, they bring it back. Everything's not
definitely.
sports or one-chord hip-hop, but bring back an overview of music.
Well, the arts are so important because your life is expanded by music and the arts, and not having that available, you know, in the school systems. Like Sparrow, your example is perfect. That it inspired you, and so many kids would be so inspired. And then, on the other side, elderly people that have maybe memory problems, maybe they have dementia or Alzheimer's. My mother did. And music, it's proven that music brings them back on so many levels. They can go back and remember these songs that they heard when they were courting or dating or growing up, and word for word, the melody, you know, of a certain era, the melody, everything perfectly. So again, from the youngest to the eldest, music is healing in that sense, you know? Yeah.
Did the cellist inspire you to, did you learn piano on your own, some of it, or did you get training?
Well, I taught myself.
Oh my goodness. And then you could teach others then, I guess.
You have.
Yeah, I've taught preschool, high school, and college, different times in my life. I think it's good to break things up, because if you're just teaching and teaching, I respect teachers because that's got to be so draining. My mother was a grade school teacher, and she'd bring all these papers home, and she's grading them, and we want to talk to Mama, you know. But I think the key is to have your own dreams. And the piano's a lot easier to play than the guitar. When I was a kid, I said, how do you know what note you're playing? Whereas the piano, there's your 12 notes right there. No fiddling around.
No, but the easiest is to sing. You don't have to play any notes. You just have to use your brain and your ears and your heart and your soul.
But you need a good voice.
Well, sometimes, you know. I did a lot of teaching too over the years. I did a lot of coaching at the studio, and I still do some. And it's a type of a situation that teaching is so intense. Didn't you always feel it was intense? Looking toward the lesson that you knew was coming in, sometimes I would kind of dread it. Because it takes all of your energy to teach. It takes so much, it's intense. But then when I was in the middle of it and doing the actual lesson, it was joyful. I loved it,
I think what you're searching for is that connection with the student, because it's that one connection that imparts the lesson to the student.
Mm-hmm. You get as much out of the student as you're giving to the student, and that's a good point, Trudy. Yeah.
When so you were coaching, and then you're helping the artists. Could you tell us some of the organizations that you have been involved with in which you've helped the elderly and artists?
Well, there's a couple of special organizations that I'm deeply involved with. My good friend from college, Tom Viola, is the executive director of Broadway's Broadway Cares Equity Fights AIDS. Now they're non-profit AIDS fundraising, and they help people on the street, food, clothing, health concerns, everything, medications. I have some notes here: meals, counseling, emergency financial assistance. Broadway Cares Equity Fights AIDS. And they have fun events every year. They have shows in New York, Easter shows, and different events throughout the year. The flea market right on Times Square, we've gone a couple of times. We've seen our friends there to fundraise for the organization. And wow, they're doing a great job, and I give them a lot of props and a lot of credit for all the work and all the hard work that that entire organization does. And another thing that's a little closer to home is Chicago Seniors. There's the Area Agency on Aging with the Department of Family and Support Services. Before COVID, I had the distinct privilege and pleasure of meeting so many seniors at different Park District buildings for classes like Zumba classes or yoga classes, dance classes. And then when COVID happened, they started offering online classes. And they still do, and I take a Zumba class every Monday morning at 9 a.m.
A Zumba?
A Zoom Zumba. A Zoom Zumba. Yes. But they do have in-person classes now at the Levy Center on Lawrence Avenue and some of the other places in the city. But I think the most important thing I gained from that was these friendships with these women and men that are just going to last a lifetime, because it was the camaraderie of going there to meet people and share part of your life and get to learn more about them. And even online, we can unmute our mic for a second and say, Happy New Year, hi, how are you? And it's a beautiful thing. And of course, the city provides a lot of services, as I'm sure you know, for the elderly, and not just elderly. I mean, I'm part of Seniors Connected, right? I'm 69 this year, okay? And Sparrow and I both tell the world we're 69, and I'm still doing Zumba. Yay!
You made it.
I made it.
Well, I think what you just told me now is that maybe that's where you get your inspiration, because you're such a thoughtful songwriter. Your songs reflect life and the beauty of it, and the quietness of it, and the essence of life. And does your work it has to affect your songwriting? How do you incorporate it?
That's a very good observation, and a very good question. I think with music and lyrics in particular, you have to really dig deep into your heart and soul to find what you want to say. And I like to write thought-provoking lyrics. Sometimes you want to just cast that away and just write fun stuff, right? But nothing is really meaningless if you're writing it. The last couple of records I've done have really brought out more and more of my lyric writing, and I really learned that from Sparrow, because he started, when I started singing with him, when we first met, I had never sung original music before, and that was my first experience singing original music instead of like cover songs or jazz standards, which is, I still do, and I love all kinds of music, but being able to create something that no one's ever heard before.
You're a great storyteller, Joanie. That's your songwriting. You're a storyteller. But what about you, Sparrow? Are you a storyteller with piano?
But of course. Well, you know, it's funny. I've always liked film, and in essence, obviously, songs existed before film. Film was relatively new when you think about it. But when you're writing a song and the chords, and you're writing the words also, it's like a little baby film, and you can contour it to what's in your mind, and you can borrow from Gershwin, R. Kelly, anybody. Just borrow whatever tool they're using, Latin music, classical. And then you make this little baby film, and you offer it. And it's funny, you only need one hit. I've never had a hit, so I have to be diverse in life to make a living. But can you imagine if you had that one hit?
Yeah, well, whenever you're on stage and you start performing, I could tell that you're telling a story. So it's very enjoyable. And of course, when you sing, all your songs are stories, and I'm mesmerized by your stories.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, I really enjoy the whole concept of creating these stories, you know. And it's funny, you were saying borrowing from this and that, different styles and writers. I borrow from like everyday sayings and incorporate them into my lyrics. You know, stuff my mom would say, or stuff anybody would say. Of course, right now I can't think of an example, but you know, "fly by night" or whatever. Incorporate that into the song. You know, I saw Trudy and Bill. I thought they were gonna fly by night, but they flew into my life. And I'm so happy.
In a helicopter.
In a helicopter down the block.
And
That's wonderful.
well, your album, My Original Plan, that was like, I was always thinking that you based that off of your planning and how it shifted.
Yeah. It's funny because I remember before I released that recording, My Original Plan, I often write my ideas down on index cards. I know we're all taking notes, right? But I have stacks of index cards where I come up with an idea and I jot it down. And I found the card that I scribbled out, My Original Plan, and I thought at the time, that'd be a great name for a record, right? And that's what I ended up doing. And then when I embarked on the recording, I thought, wow, now I'm going to have to come up with something to write the song, My Original Plan. What am I going to write about? You know? So I had to go back in my life. And I started out, I thought, what was my original plan? Was to learn to fly a kite. My original plan was to know what's wrong from right? And sayings and things like that. It just started rolling and evolving, and it was fun. Probably one of my favorites. Yeah.
And that's a contribution. This
Aw.
contribution as well.
Yeah. Well, I hope people can learn from listening.
And whenever you're performing on the stage, songs from your album, it seems as if you're doing it a little differently every time. You're just feeling it at that moment.
Well, that is something that I think the artist does. You don't want to do it the same way. Whether you're singing a cover song or a jazz standard or one of your own original songs.
And you do have a song to share with us. Could you tell us a little bit about that song?
Oh, yes. There's a song that I recorded in 2011, but when we did my CD release party for my last record, Accidental Melody, I had the opportunity to do a live performance at the Green Mill in Chicago, and Farid Haq, the guitarist, was performing with me, and we're going to play this video, I believe,
Yes.
correct? Okay, so Farid is beautifully arranged the song in a new way than from when I recorded it, because it was just going to be the two of us instead of with a band like I had on the record. So it was like a whole new thing. Like you said, it's got to be different every time. And my good friend of over 30 years, Claire Johnson, is a wonderful sign language singer. She's an interpreter, and she joined us for this beautiful performance.
Wonderful. Let's roll the video.
Thank you.
As you spend your life at the Green Mill, Joanie Pallatto.
See the pyramids on the lonely shore. Hear the beckoning of a distant soul. Do the charity and it makes you whole as you spend your life, as you spend your life, as you spend your life. Stealing promises to achieve your goal. Do you realize that we'll soon grow old? Opportunities, they may come and go as you spend your life, as you spend your life, as you spend your life. We sail past 60 minutes like it was yesterday. We stand tall, never thinking about today. The time comes when you must find your way. We will never know what becomes of tomorrow. We may never share the time we can borrow. Oh. See the pyramids as the journey bends. Hear the echoing that will never end. If you say a prayer, will you comprehend as you spend your life? as you spend your life, as you spend your life. Oh yeah, as you spend your life, as you spend your life, as you spend your life. 60 minutes. Minutes. We sailed past our lives.